The date was November 22nd of 1963. President John F. Kennedy, accompanied by his wife Jackie, took a trip to Dallas, Texas to begin his campaign for re-election. Many Americans loved President Kennedy for his enthusiasm and relatable personality. An important place for Kennedy to campaign in was Dallas, Texas. Political tensions were at a high. Many people in Texas had a problem with Kennedy's civil rights proposal, and he wanted to gain more support of Republicans in Texas. That morning, Kennedy and the First Lady were traveling to a luncheon by motorcade, with Governor Connally and his wife Nellie sitting in the front seats. Behind them, Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson and his wife traveled in a separate vehicle. People were waving from the streets to show their support. As the motorcade was turning onto Elm Street, this is what happened. At 1 p.m., it was announced that President Kennedy was dead from head wounds. Television and radio became the main sources for people to learn about the tragedy. People all over the world mourned for the loss of President Kennedy and wept for his widowed wife, Jackie. Here, Walter Cronkite, a famous reporter for CBS, lost his composure when he announced to the world that the president has been shot.
Official, President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, some 38 minutes ago. Vice President Lyndon Johnson has left the hospital in Dallas, but we do not know to where he has proceeded. Presumably, he will be taking the oath of office shortly and become the 36th President of the United States.
As the motorcade made its way to the hospital, police officers went into the Texas School Book Depository on Elm Street. Witnesses claimed to have seen birds fly off the roof at the time of the shot, and thought this was the place where the gun was fired. Police searched the grounds and eventually found Lee Harvey Oswald, an employee at the depository. Later, Oswald disappeared and the investigation went on, where they found a gun on the 6th floor. The Dallas police heard a radio call reporting the murder of another officer. This call led them to the Texas Theater, where they arrested 24-year-old Oswald. JFK's body was flown from Dallas to Washington, D.C. Jackie Kennedy never took off her blood-stained suit so that the world could see what happened to her husband that day. A few days later, Kennedy's funeral was televised for all of the country to see. 93% of American household televisions played the funeral, which took place on Monday, November 25th. Robert Dallek, a historian and author, spoke about Kennedy's funeral and said, "Kennedy's funeral temporarily bound Americans together and created a fund of sympathy around the globe. In some peculiar way, it made Kennedy into an enduring hero who continues to be seen as a great president." The president's casket was led to the Capitol Rotunda in a procession, with U.S. Armed Forces marching in honor. After the ceremonies, the doors opened to the public and the line to get in was 3 miles long. Finally, the casket was carried to St. Matthew's Cathedral for a mass with the heads of state, and then to Arlington National Cemetery. James Reston from the New York Times wrote about how Americans felt after the assassination, saying, "America wept, not alone for its dead young president, but for itself. Grief was general, for somehow the worst in the nation had prevailed over the best." As the new president, Lyndon B. Johnson formed the Warren Commission, headed by Chief Justice Earl Warren. The 7-member commission was created to investigate the assassination. In a report released in September of 1964, the Warren Commission came to the conclusion that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone in killing the president. A theory introduced by Arlen Specter of the Warren Commission was a single bullet theory, which questioned the trajectory path of the bullet. Since Governor Connally was seated in front of JFK and was also injured, the commission determined that a single bullet passed through Kennedy and hit Connally. The commission stated that they had convincing evidence and there was a difference of opinion between the members. Ultimately, the Warren Commission concluded that this evidence was not significant. The Zapruder film, captured by Abraham Zapruder, played a key role in the Warren Commission report. The film shows the president in his motorcade driving through the streets of Dallas and captures his assassination. People still analyze the video today to get a hold of what really happened. The assassination of President Kennedy led to a tumultuous decade filled with conspiracy theories, which are still being debated today. There were questions as to who killed the president, how many shots there were, where the gun was shot from, and the reasoning behind the killing. Police never got the chance to question Harvey. While he was being taken into the jail, Jack Ruby, a man on the streets, came up to Oswald and shot and killed him on the spot. A few days after the assassination, a poll was taken which showed that 29% of Americans believed that Oswald acted alone. After the Warren Commission report became public, 69% thought that Oswald was responsible. Some theories include that a man that looked like Oswald killed the president, and some believe that Oswald was working for the mob or the government. There was evidence to support that the mafia killed Kennedy. There were secretly taped conversations where mafia leaders talked about how they wanted him dead. Also, John's brother Robert Kennedy tried putting an end to organized crime, which could have led to resentment from the mafia. Other people believe that the Cuban government was involved because they were angry at CIA plans to kill Fidel Castro. Some even think that the US government took part in the assassination because several officials were mad at Kennedy for thinking about pulling troops out of Vietnam. Although JFK's term as president was shortened, he left a legacy of hope and optimism. America wept at his death, and many joined together to honor their dead president. He was a man of honor, and Americans thought of him as a great president, like Lincoln, Washington, and FDR. This all relates to hope and despair because much of America and the rest of the world felt a great loss and sadness at JFK's death.